Well, good morning, Hickory Ridge family.
Good morning.
It is so good to be with you. For those of you I have not had a chance to meet, as Ruth said, my name is Andy. I'm one of the pastors here. I'm honored to be with you, continuing a series that we've been in over the last 2 weeks entitled The Spiritual Life, where we've been taking a look at a question: how do we grow our faith closer to Christ? It comes from a feeling, I think, that if we're being honest, all of us have felt at one point or another in our walk with God, or maybe you're feeling it right now, and that's stuck. I don't feel like my faith is growing. I don't feel like my relationship with God is going in the right direction. Well, this series highlights many great themes, and one of them is that the Bible is very, very practical, sometimes brutally practical. So that's what we've done. We've highlighted 5 very practical disciplines. And you've seen them before. If you haven't, I encourage you to catch up on this series. They are attend, serve, the one we're going to talk about today, connect, give, and then share. These are 5 very practical disciplines that if we get into our lives regularly, consistently, and here's the kicker, don't miss this, if they're built up out of the right foundation, if they're built up out of a foundation of a sincere desire to want to grow, of a sincere desire to want to know Christ more, you do these 5, you can't help but grow. Sure as I'm standing here, I'm letting you know you can't help but grow. Now, what we're going to talk about today is connect. And as many of you know, as Ruth just said, we offer connect groups here at Hickory Ridge. We do that because we believe strongly that it's not only a lifeblood of our church, but that you actually grow best when you're in obedience to God and in connection with each other. And so connection is so incredibly important. When you do life with people, that's a saying you hear a lot, doing life together. But when you do life together with folks who have the same priorities as you, maybe in different parts of their walk with God, maybe different seasons of their life, but they share a desire to want to know God more, then you can't help but grow. Now, I want to make some observations about these 5 practical disciplines before we jump too much into connecting. The first theme that kind of unites all 5 of these is what I just mentioned. They're practical. They are intentional. They are purposeful. And they mean so much to a growing faith, because in our faith with Christ, we're never really holding our ground. We might be in a waiting period. We might be in a little waiting season where we're waiting on an answer from the Lord, and that's good. That's fine. But that doesn't define our entire faith. Our faith is active. Our faith moves. Christ was asked one time, what is the greatest commandment? He said to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbors as yourself. Love is a verb. Our faith is active. We're never holding our ground. We're never just pushing some cosmic suspend button in our life and just staying pat right here. We're either going if we want to grow. We're either moving and incorporating practical disciplines in our life if we want to know Christ more, if we want to move closer to Christ, or we're not. And then we're moving in the other direction. Then our faith becomes more distant. God becomes farther away. We say things like we can't hear God anymore. God is so far away from me. God didn't move. We did, because we weren't implementing practical disciplines in our life. Now, having said that, you can do some or all of these disciplines, not grow a lick. The key is, are they built up out of the right foundation? Maybe you grew up like me in kind of a rules-based faith, kind of a faith that was heavy on tradition. You know, as a kid growing up as a Catholic, we had kind of an inside joke, let's count how many times we're going to stand up, how many times we're going to sit down, how many times we're going to kneel in this ceremony. And as a kid, you don't really know why you're doing what you're doing, so you're competitive like me, be the first one to stand up. I won. You don't know why you're doing it, but then you grow up as an adult and you want to try to start to get some of the answers about why you do what you do. And you see some of the adults around you are just, well, it's the time. I know in a couple prayers we're going to be kneeling, and they're the first ones to kneel, and then they look around, and there's invariably some people that are still standing because they haven't come to church very often, and they don't know this is the time to kneel, and everyone's just kind of looking and saying, I caught you, and you don't know why you're doing it. You can do some or all of these things out of tradition or obligation, and as sure as I'm standing here, I'm telling you, they're just activity. But if built up out of the right foundation, if built up, you heard Pastor Justin in the opening message to this series, you want to grow closer to Christ? Be what he's about. Be where he is. Have important to you what's important to him. And it is the church, built up out of the right foundation. You can't help but go and grow if you attend and serve and connect, give, and share. And I just think that that's worth emphasizing. That despite its faults, despite its flaws, it's the church that is the hope of the world. It is God's church that he says he's going to build and ain't no one going to stop him. That he died for. It's the church that is the hope of the world. All 5 of these have to do in and through the church. There's some other thoughts out there. There's some other practices out there. I just want to look you all in the eyes and say, these practical disciplines are built up out of the local church. You can attend a church and not know why you're doing it. You can serve in a church, and if it's an obligation, it starts to become a burden. You start to hear things like, I'm getting burnt out by church. I'm getting burnt out by serving. I'm going to take a break. You heard Justin. I can't really explain it fully, but when you attend, when the truth of God's word is shared corporately with men and women and young people who desire to know Christ, things happen. Chains drop. Scales are removed. Clarity comes. Doors open. I don't know fully how he does it. And it's just as well. Because he's God and I'm not. How good, how pleasant it is when brothers and sisters dwell together in unity. When we, like we just did, collectively offer our praise and our worship to the Lord, something happens. He inhabits the praises of his people. He lives there. He moves there. He speaks there. When you serve, the world says when you give something, when you offer something, when you freely give it, it's not yours anymore. It belongs to the person that you gave it to. You don't have, they now have. In the kingdom of God, I can't fully explain it, but when you serve, you get. You receive a greater fulfillment in the gifts that God's put inside of you. You get a heightened sensitivity to all of God's blessing in your life. It's the same way with connecting. If these are out of tradition or obligation, they're one more thing on the calendar, it's one more box to check, it's activity, and all of us will eventually grow tired of it. But built up out of the right foundation, actively, practically, regularly, disciplines that are incorporated in the local church, God will grow. We invest and invite people to come, to see how good God is, and we grow wide. And we have. We get out of the rows, stop looking at the backs of people's heads, get into a circle, connect eyeballs and hearts. We grow deep. Or it could be one more thing on your calendar. One more meeting you got to go to. Eventually, your attendance will be spotty, and you'll wonder, why am I not feeling connected to people in the church? It's not enough to just do these 5. Absent being practically incorporated into the church, it'll be activity. But done from a motivation and in a place that God says, I died for. I'm going to build it. And even the gates of hell won't stop me. Then supernatural things will happen. Then we'll grow closer to Christ. Then we'll be connected. Now, you might have heard the phrase before. You show me your friends, and I will show you your future. You show me your friends, and I will show you your future. Real wisdom there. You know why? Because it came from a book of wisdom. In the book of Proverbs 13:20, whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. I highlighted that word walks because this isn't just, hey, I heard this great TED Talk recently, or I went to a super wonderful conference. This is a discipline that's regularly implemented in your life. You want wisdom, you got to walk with people. That's a daily muscle you got to exercise regularly. Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. I don't know, what comes to mind when you hear that word fool in terms of a definition? Is it somebody who's just not very bright, doesn't think about things, or maybe is led by their emotions, pin their ears back 90 miles an hour with their hair on fire, acts before they think or consider? That's actually not the biblical definition of a fool. Biblical definition of a fool is this: a person who knows the difference between right and wrong, chooses to do wrong anyway. This is not somebody overcome with emotion. This is not somebody who just doesn't consider. No, this is somebody who stands at the fork in the road and looks down one path and looks down another and sees the positive consequences of this decision. And even though maybe there may be some positive emotions in the short term, sees some negative consequences down the road and says, you know what, Jimmy cracked corn and I don't care. I'm doing it. Somebody who knows right from wrong, chooses wrong anyway. That's a fool. That's somebody that Proverbs says, if you make them your regular companion, you walk with the wise regularly, you'll become wise. If you make them a companion, you're going to suffer harm. Sin is messy. Sin bleeds. Sin cuts. Sin infects those around. If you make them your companions, you're going to suffer harm. So how do we practically walk out that wisdom from Proverbs? How do we walk with the wise? Well, we do it through structured relationships. Structured relationships is a commitment that we make with like-minded people, specifically for the progress and the growth that may occur. We enter into a relationship, and we're all different here. We all have different ages, different seasons of life, different backgrounds, maybe grew up different ends of the Christian church, or maybe didn't grow up in church at all. Maybe you were born and lived here all your life in Delaware. Maybe you're like me and you came recently. We're all different. And yet, when we enter into a commitment with like-minded people, people who have the same priorities, same desire to want to grow closer to Christ, we do so specifically for the progress and the growth that may occur. Where'd you get an idea like that? Well, birth of the church. In Acts chapter 2, verse 42, it says, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. This wasn't, hey, if I'm in the neighborhood, maybe I'll be a part of it. No, this is not a half-hearted commitment. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. Again, of all the different characteristics that are embodied in this church, that's something that unites us. That's something, the apostles' teaching, having it be Christ-centered, a desire to want to know Christ more, a desire to want to hear him more, desire to want to grow closer to him and to fellowship. There's the apostles' teaching, the picture of the church, to fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and to prayer, a picture of connect groups, in obedience to God and in connection with each other. Now, in a few verses later, it even emphasizes it. In verse 46, every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts, picture of the church. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, picture of going deeper in connection with each other in small groups. You don't just stumble upon that. You create it. It's intentional. You may have heard the Spanish phrase before, mi casa es su casa, right? Which the first time I heard it, I thought it meant, you think this is Andy's house? It's really Suzanne's house. I was shocked that it didn't mean that. Mi casa es Suzanne casa. No. Mi casa es su casa means my house is your house. In English, we would say something like, make yourself at home. Now, it would be a little weird, I think, maybe a little uncomfortable, unsettling for people if you invited myself, my family over, first time, we're just getting to know each other, and you invite us into your house, and I immediately made a beeline for your refrigerator, opened it up, and started rummaging through, looking for something to eat, something to drink. And that might be a little weird, And yet, over time, over experience, over being intentional, over being purposeful, there are people who will earn those refrigerator rights in your home, And so I have a question for everybody here. It's, how many people have been invited to go into the refrigerator of your life? How many people have you allowed to open up that refrigerator and to find what they're looking for? Love and joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. It's a earned right. It's something that generally happens over time and experience. But when they open up that refrigerator, because they've earned it, they've built up that trust, they've been invited in, and they see what they're looking for, I can encourage you. When they don't find what they're looking for, you can ask some questions. How are you doing? What's going on? How can I help you? How many people have been invited into the refrigerator of your life? This is what we do in connect groups. When we get in circles and we become a little vulnerable. We intentionally become a little transparent to open that up. Or else, like I said earlier, it's just activity. It's just another meeting on your calendar. It's another box to check. Who have we given refrigerator rights to? Real connecting is so vitally important in this 21st century world we live in, this interconnected, social mediaed world. Real relationships are at a premium. They're at a paramount. I said something like that to my mom. She said, I got a joke for you. I said, okay, let me have it. It's called a senior's version to Facebook. You ready? It says, for those in my generation who do not and cannot comprehend why Facebook exists, I'm trying to make friends outside of Facebook using the same principles of Facebook. Therefore, every day I walk down the street and I tell passersby what I've eaten, how I feel at the moment, what I'd done the night before, and what I'll do later and with whom. I give them pictures of my family, my dog, my gardening, taking things apart in the garage, watering the lawn, standing in front of landmarks, driving around town, having lunch, dinner, doing what everybody and anybody does every day. I also go up to them and I listen to their conversations. And if I like it, I give them a thumbs up. If I love it, I give them 2 thumbs up. And it works just like Facebook. In fact, already I got 4 people following me, 2 police officers, private investigators, psychiatrists. It's awesome. Don't get me wrong. There are many, many great uses of technology. And one I just want to share with you for just a moment. Some of you may know, earlier this year I was asked to join the board of directors of a phenomenal organization, phenomenal nonprofit organization called the Hoving Home. And the Hoving Home for more than 50 years has been in the business of helping women beat addiction. Whether it be drugs, alcohol, doesn't matter. For 50 years, they've helped thousands and thousands and thousands of women beat their addiction and stay sober to the success rate of 87%. Over 50 years, 87% of the women who have completed the program have stayed clean and sober. And it's just a phenomenal organization. I fell in love with it immediately. And, they don't do it with psychiatry. They don't do it with pharmaceuticals. They don't do it with 12 steps to a better you. For 50 years, they've given them Jesus. For 50 years, they've given them Jesus. It's a great organization. I have volunteered for it. I've worked for it. Now I'm on the board of directors of it. And one of the things I love about it is that it has a multiplier effect. I love being involved in things that have a multiplier effect. That's why I'm part of the local church. When we give encouragement to somebody, when we meet them where they're at with the truth of God's word, we're not just helping somebody who has some pain right now in this snapshot moment. We're actually planting seeds. God works all things together for good, for those who love him, are called according to his purpose. That pain gets redeemed. That they're walking through gets to be redeemed in the lives of other people. It has a multiplier effect. I love that. Same thing with the Hoving Home. It's not just a woman battle with addiction and her sustained sobriety that changes the course of her life. It actually changes her kid's life and her parents' life and her grandparents' life and her siblings' life and her friends' life and her co-workers' life. These are women who have been helped over 50 years. Some have been born in prison. Some have been raised by pimps and raised in crack dens. Some have been suburban women, college degrees, teachers, lawyers, doctors. One was an astronaut, state senators. Over 50 years, thousands of women that then have a multiplier effect. Their family tree looks different as a result of that love that's shown to them in that season. Now, there are holes to this process. And one of the holes is women with small kids. Any organization that's battling addiction knows that a lot of times it makes a bad situation worse when you have to separate a woman from her children because the facilities don't allow it. Well, at the Hoving Home, one of the things we're excited about that we're doing is we're retrofitting some of our facilities to account for women that have kids so that they can stay together as the mother wins her sobriety and continues to invest in love and pour into her kids. And so that post came on Facebook recently, and I was excited about it, so I shared it from the Hoving Home site to my site, and then Facebook asked me real quick, do you want to put a donation button on this? $5, $10 for this new effort? I said, sure. 3 minutes later, a former coworker of mine from my days in corporate America donated $100. That's 2 clicks, 3 minutes. This organization I love just made $100. That's a great use of technology. That's phenomenal. I try to do that personally. Use social media to encourage and lift up, sometimes for some yucks and people's enjoyment, but mostly to encourage. We do that here at Hickory Ridge. We use social media to invest in people, to encourage them to see how good God is, to give them convenient ways to sign up for events, ministries here, so that more people with a click can find out what God is doing in and through their church. There are great uses of technology. And after all, just did a quick little cursory research. Did you know in 2018, over 77% of Americans have a smartphone? Not a cell phone, smartphone. Whether they are connected or not is another question. But they have the capability of being connected. 3 out of 4 Also in 2018, there's over 87% of Americans have at least one social media profile. They may use it to troll the grandkids. They may not be very active in it. Who knows? But they have at least one social media. It's where people are. And again, there's some great organizations out there. I encourage people to be a part of it. I am. I just shared one. But if it's not built up out of the local church, if it's not built up out of what God is doing, who God is seeking, then it's activity. It'll do some good here on earth, but it'll have no eternal significance. You're not storing up for yourself treasure in heaven, where moth and rust will not destroy, where thieves will not break in and steal. After all, Paul said it this way in 1 Corinthians 9:22. He said, I have become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. Habitat for Humanity, great organization. Meals on Wheels, great organization. Being about what he's about for the goal of reaching people for Christ. That's the foundation that we attend and serve and connect and give and share. Built up out of that, we can do some phenomenal things, but it starts in and through the local church. It is built up out of the local church. Now, there is another side to this coin. Great uses of technology, and they're out there, and we use them. There is another side to this coin, and that is the Facebook friends and the Instagram followers and the likes and the loves and the shares and the retweets can, if we're not careful, start, and the endorphin rushes that come with all those building up of social media followings, and they like my post, they shared it, they retweeted it, can start to do something inside of us if we're not careful. It can start to replace real relationships. It can, instead of looking at it as an enhancer, as a facilitator to great relationships, it can start to replace those relationships. It does not replace real relationships. We tend to spend time on image management if we're not careful. And I'd say even the best of us, even those who are most mature in our faith, even those who have a really good handle on the use of social media and its value, we tend to, if we're at a fork in the road, and on one side it's image management, what other people think of us, and on the other side it's that really hard, substantive, proactive, vulnerable, authentic efforts to let people in and to help encourage us on that real change, that substantive change that allows us to live up to the fullness of the plan God has for us. We tend to choose image management. We tend to put our best foot forward. We tend to have our prettiest, happiest, shiniest, most filtered, hey, I took 40 pictures of this, and that's the best one. I'm going to put that one up there. I just tell you, my feet are not my best feature. I mean, by a long shot. I got them from my daddy, Hashtag I got them from my daddy. My feet are bony and thin, and all the toes go east and west. It's not pretty. I'm a visual learner, so this would be the point in the sermon where I'd say, and here's an example. I won't do that to you. I love you guys too much to subject you guys this early in the morning. I'm not going to put a picture of my feet up there on social media. Now, maybe some of you are like, I don't think anybody's put a picture of their feet up there. I mean, it's funny. Suzanne's foot looks like a foot. All the toes go straight. Mine are just all over the place. Our kids, some of their toes are Suzanne. They're straight, and then there's some that just kind of go that way. Ask me. Actually, it's my dad. But anyway, I'm not going to put my feet up on social media. If we're at that fork in the road, we tend to go in that image management. What people think of us. There is a gap between how others view our lives and how we're currently living. This is true for all of us. I don't care how mature you are in your faith. I don't care how wise you are on social media. there is a gap, some bigger, some smaller. There is a gap between how others view our lives and how we're currently living. God wants to bridge that gap between how we're currently living and the fullness of the plan and the purpose that he has for each and every one of us. How does he do that? He does that through Christ-centered relationships. Relationships where folks can get into that refrigerator and start rummaging around and start looking for not what other people think should be in your refrigerator, but God's best for you. They're believing God's best for you. They're praying God's best for you. And they're looking for God's best for you when you invite them in and when they rummage around a little bit and ask some questions. Hey, where are the pickles? You don't got pickles. You need pickles. We're going to end with this. Romans 12:5. He says this: Christ makes us one body and individuals who are connected to each other. This is God's design. This is God's desire. Life works best when we're in obedience to God and connected to each other.